Ancient history is often associated with Rome, Greece, or Egypt. However, beyond these great empires, dozens of unique states existed, now remembered only by specialists. Their power could span entire regions. Their rulers forged alliances and fought the giants of their time, and their legacy still hides in chronicles and archaeological finds. Today, we will look at 4 such examples. Galatia, in the heart of Asia Minor, the prosperous trading network of Sogdiana at the crossroads of the Silk Road, Numidia, the kingdom of horsemen in North Africa, and the mysterious Muisca Confederation in South America. How did they emerge? Where did they disappear? And did they leave any trace in the present? As always, it promises to be fascinating. Galatia, perhaps the most unexpected Celtic fragment of the ancient world. When we think of the Celts, we usually imagine Britain, Ireland, or Gaul. Yet, in the 2nd century BCE, one tribal confederation found itself in the heart of Asia Minor. How did they get there? It all began with the Great Celtic Migration. After Alexander the Great's triumph and the weakening of his empire, Celtic tribes from the Danube moved into the Balkans. They ravaged Greece, besieged Delphi, and reached Thrace. Part of these tribes, led by chieftains Brennus, Leonorius, and Luterius, crossed the Bosporus at the invitation of local kings, who sought to use these warlike Celts as mercenaries against their neighbors. At first, the Galatians served exactly this role, a formidable force hired by the rulers of Bithynia, Pergamum, or the Seleucids. But soon, the Celts got a taste for new lands and independently seized the central plateau of Asia Minor. There, among hills and steppes, they settled, subjugating the local population and dividing the territory into 3 tribal districts: the Tectosages, Tolistobogi, and Trochmi. Thus, Galatia was born. Galatia's uniqueness lay in the fact that it was a Celtic society surrounded by Greek civilization. The Galatians preserved their customs, the warrior cult, tribal nobility, and priests similar to Druids. At the same time, they actively interacted with the Hellenistic world, traded, formed alliances, and gradually adopted the Greek language and culture. To the Greeks, they remained barbarians, but rather civilized ones. Relations with neighbors were tense. The Galatians repeatedly troubled coastal cities of Asia Minor, demanded tribute from Pergamum, and even threatened the Aegean shores. In response, the king of Pergamum, Attalus I, inflicted several defeats on them and gained the reputation of protector of Hellas. Yet the Galatians remained a significant military force to be reckoned with. By the 1st century BCE, Galatia had become a kind of buffer between major powers: the Seleucids, Pergamum, Pontus, and later Rome. The Galatians could be allies or enemies depending on political circumstances. In 189 BCE, during the Galatian War, the Romans decisively defeated the Celtic army near their capital, Ancyra. From that point, Galatia effectively came under Roman control. In the 1st century CE, the Galatians allied with Rome in wars against Mithridates of Pontus. For their loyalty, they received nominal autonomy, and their rulers even gained the title of kings of Galatia. However, this did not prevent gradual integration into the Roman system. In 25 BCE, the last king died without heirs, and Emperor Augustus reorganized Galatia as a Roman province. Still, Galatia left its mark. The Celtic presence in Asia Minor lasted for several centuries, and even during the early Christian era, locals remembered their heritage. The Apostle Paul wrote his famous epistle to the Galatians specifically for this region. For early Christians, the term Galatians referred to Celts living among Greeks and Romans. Archaeology confirms that Celtic elements in weaponry and burial rites persisted in Galatia for a long time. Sogdiana, not a single state, but rather a network of prosperous city-states in the heart of Central Asia. Its lands stretched between the Sirdarya and Zaravshan rivers, with key centers in Samarkand, ancient Marakanda, Bukhara, Panjakent, Kesh, now Chakrasabs, and others. These cities made Sogdiana a critical hub on the Great Silk Road. The origins of these settlements go deep into the first millennium BCE. Archaeology shows that even then, oases in the Fergana Valley and Zaravshan region had fortified settlements with irrigation and trade systems. Fertile lands and strategic location at crossroads made Sogdiana rich and a desirable prize for conquerors. Alexander the Great called Marakanda the Pearl of the East, though its fortresses had to be stormed. Sogdiana's distinctiveness lay in its commercial civilization. Sogdian merchants dominated caravan routes for centuries, connecting China, India, and Persia. They acted as intermediaries in the trade of silk, spices, silver, and horses. Their language, Sogdian, from the Iranian family, became a kind of Latin of the Silk Road. Documents in it are found from Persia to China. Sogdian cities were cosmopolitan. Iranians, Scythians, Turks, Indians, Chinese, and later Arabs lived there. The Sogdians themselves were highly adaptable. They easily adopted foreign cultural elements, but maintained their own identity. In Panjakent, wall paintings feature motifs from Indian epics, Iranian legends, and even Buddhist tales, a true cultural fusion. Relations with neighbors were complex. Initially, Sogdiana fell under Achaemenid rule, then was conquered by Alexander, later passing from the Seleucids to the Kushans, from the Hephthalites to Turkic Khaganates. Yet Sogdian cities preserved relative autonomy under each conquest. Their merchants were too valuable for connecting empires with distant markets. However, this cultural flexibility proved fatal. In the 7th century, Arab conquests delivered the decisive blow. After bloody revolts, Samarkand and Bukhara fell to the caliphate. The Sogdian language was replaced by Persian, and the elite quickly embraced Islam. By the modern era, Sogdians had assimilated among other peoples, Tajiks and Uzbeks, yet their influence was enormous. The Sogdians brought Buddhism from India to China and were the first to deliver silk there. Their language influenced Turkic writing, and cities like Samarkand and Bukhara survive today, reminding us of Sogdiana's trading glory. Now, let us turn away from the Near East. Numidia, a state that emerged in North Africa in the 2nd century BCE, in what is now Algeria and Tunisia. In the ancient world, it was primarily known as the homeland of unparalleled cavalry, which made the Numidians famous as some of the finest horsemen of antiquity. Initially, Numidia was not a unified state. Tribes lived here whose connection to modern Berbers is not fully established. They shared a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle, herding livestock and living in the mountainous and steppe regions of the Maghreb. Cities were rare, and life revolved around tribal alliances. This society produced a unique military force, light cavalry without saddles or bridles. Numidians controlled horses with voice and stick, and in battle they were lightning fast. A raid, a volley of javelins, and a swift retreat, classic nomadic cavalry tactics. Initially, Numidia was under Carthaginian influence, and Numidian cavalry participated in many Carthaginian wars, including Hannibal's campaigns. Polybius noted that Numidian cavalry repeatedly saved the Carthaginians from total defeat. Over time, however, Numidian kings began to pursue independent policies, maneuvering between Carthage and Rome. In 202 BCE, after the Second Punic War, the king of the Massili, Massinissa, allied with Rome. He united the tribes and effectively founded a unified Numidian kingdom, with its capital at Cirta, formerly a Phoenician city. This was a historic event. For the first time, a centralized Berber state emerged from fragmented nomadic alliances. Massinissa promoted the settlement of nomads, encouraged agriculture and city building, and most importantly made Numidia a strategic Roman ally in the region. Yet this friendship was not always smooth. After Massinissa's death, his successors repeatedly intervened in Roman affairs. The most famous was King Jugurtha, whose war with Rome at the end of the 2nd century BCE became legendary. Jugurtha skillfully fought, bribed Roman senators, and held off Roman legions for years. Eventually, however, he was defeated by Gaius Marius through the betrayal of his ally Bocchus, king of Mauritania. After Jugurtha, Numidia retained nominal independence, but gradually became a Roman client state. In the 1st century BCE, parts of its territory were annexed into Roman provinces, and in 46 BCE, after Caesar's victory over Pompey's supporters in Africa, Numidia was fully incorporated into the Roman state. Why didn't Numidia endure? The answer is simple: neighbors too powerful. Carthage, and later Rome, inevitably drew it into their conflicts. Moreover, the state relied on the charisma of specific kings like Massinissa. Without strong leadership, Numidian tribes quickly fragmented, a weakness exploited by Rome. Nevertheless, Numidia left a lasting legacy. Its cavalry became a model for light cavalry, influencing the Roman army and inspiring future mounted peoples. Archaeology preserves the remains of Numidian cities, notably Cirta, modern Constantine, where traces of ancient structures are still visible. Finally, the Muisca, one of the pre-Columbian states of the Americas, now seldom mentioned, though in their time they were as significant as the Aztecs or Incas. The Muisca inhabited modern central Colombia, in the high Andes on the Altiplano Cundiboyacense. Their polity is called the Muisca Confederation, which existed roughly from the 6th to the 15th century. The Muisca were distinctive as a union of tribes and chiefs, not a single centralized state. They had two main centers: Bogotá in the south, modern Bogotá, and Hunza in the north, modern Tunja. Other influential chiefs also existed. All recognized a shared cultural identity, but maintained autonomy. This alliance made the Muisca flexible. They could unite for war or trade, but were not rigidly subordinate to a single center. The Muisca were renowned for their gold work. Their artisans created exquisite ornaments and figurines from gold, copper, and alloys, used in rituals and as symbols of power. The legend of El Dorado is associated with the Muisca. The Spanish heard of a ritual where the chief covered himself in gold dust and immersed in Lake Guatavita, offering gifts to the spirits. The legend, embellished by conquistadors, became symbolic of a mythical golden city. The Muisca economy was based on agriculture in mountain valleys: maize, potatoes, quinoa, beans. They skillfully used terraces and irrigation. Trade linked them to neighbors, exchanging salt, emeralds, and textiles for tropical products. The Muisca effectively monopolized regional salt and emerald production, bringing immense wealth. Unlike the Aztecs or Incas, they did not build massive stone temples. Their sacred sites were often lakes or hills, and rituals included sacrifices, including humans. Their neighbors were Andean and rainforest peoples, but no serious rivals threatened their alliance. This trait proved fatal with the arrival of the Spanish. In 1537, Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada arrived with a small force of 800 men. Despite the Muisca's numerical advantage, their fragmentation and weak military organization rendered resistance ineffective. Within a few years, the Confederation collapsed, and Muisca lands became part of Spanish New Granada. Yet the Muisca legacy lives on. Their descendants are part of modern Colombian society. Many regional toponyms derive from Muisca language. Images of their gods and the symbolism of gold figurines remain part of Colombia's cultural identity. Bogotá hosts the Gold Museum, entirely dedicated to Muisca goldwork. These are far from all the lesser-known kingdoms and civilizations of antiquity. There is enough material for an entire series. If this intrigued you, or you have ideas for new videos, you know what to do under the video. Until next time, friends!